All right, welcome back once again to Inside the Matrix. We hope that all of you are doing great out there in this crazy, crazy world. Anyway, today I have two really fascinating, interesting, wonderful people that are going to be joining me on this talk today. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring them in and introduce them to you right now. Here's Colleen, and here is Miles from the PAO Web.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, say hey to everybody. Anyway, people are going to be wondering, what is the PAO Web? Now, some of you out there I know will be very familiar with this because of the work of Sheldon Neidl, and some of you go way back like we do. But for those who don't, Colleen, would you mind kind of filling us in on some of your background and how you became involved with PAO Web and that whole, I guess you could just say it's a planetary activation initiative. Is that a good description?
That's it, planetary activation, which is all about galactic activation.
All right, so go ahead.
Hi, my name's Colleen Marshall, and I became involved with the Planetary Activation Organization in the very beginning in '97 is when they started. But I knew Sheldon a little bit before that. I had what's called a dramatic wake up. So one day I'm just, having all my nails done and high heels and working corporate and being a nice person, but not on the path at all, not on a spiritual path, but a good person. And one day I woke up on a Saturday and I heard this voice, go to a metaphysical bookstore. And I'm like, I must still be dreaming. So I ignored it. The next Saturday, booming voice. And the weird thing is, I didn't think that was odd. And yet I'd never had that before. So it's like, okay, I'm going to go to a metaphysical bookstore. Where is one? So I went and I walked in there and I'm looking at all these books with Pleiadians and Arcturians and this and that. And I'm like, why am I here? I don't know what any of this means. And then I met my first teacher because she was putting on a class about women who run with wolves. Oh, okay, I can handle that. Native American folklore and culture. Okay, good. So then her name's Barbara Light, and she became my first teacher. And after a very short time of going to her class, she said, you need to come to my meditation class. So I did that. And then she said, you're on the fast track. You need to have Reiki 1 and 2 together. I've never done that, but they're telling me to do that for you. So I did that. Now, this is in a span of about 5 months. And then I walk into her house and there's 40 people there. And I go, oh gosh, now what am I into? And Sheldon Neidl and his wife at the time, Miriam, they were there to explain all about the photon belt and the ascension of planet Earth and introduce us to the Galactic Federation and, the whole ascension for planet Earth to reunite with the galactic community. So I'm like, okay. And then the whole room disappeared and it was just Sheldon, Miriam, and Colleen, at least for me. And my head opened up and all these geometric figures and light and color came in. I didn't know the word light codes at the time. I didn't know what was happening, but it felt wonderful and great. And I went, oh, Sheldon, Miriam, and Colleen, we're a team and from the star system Sirius, and we're going to do good stuff together. And I'm like, okay. And so Miriam and I became really, really close friends, and I did everything with her. So in that, then I also hung out with Sheldon a little bit. Then Miriam and Sheldon got divorced, but they still lived together because they still had a mission together, but they just shouldn't be married anymore. So then she moves to Mount Shasta and says, Colleen, you need to help Sheldon because he doesn't have a car. I'm taking the car. I said, okay, I can do that. And so that's how Sheldon and I started a romantic relationship. And so I lived with Sheldon until 2 years ago when he became ill from direct energy weapon attacks. And now he's in a home because I couldn't take care of him anymore. One person can't take care of him anymore. But he's hanging in there. And
Good.
a lot of people believe that he's waiting for the med beds and then he'll come back and have a big comeback. So I'm hoping that that's true. But if it's not, that's okay too, because we know that life continues and I'll see him again somewhere else.
Well,
So,
tell us about for some people are going to remember Sheldon, and some people have probably never heard of him. So, can you give us a brief outline on Sheldon's mission and your mission, but what Sheldon was speaking about, and when we talk about the Galactic Federation and all that?
yeah, Sheldon, ever since he was a child, he was contacted by the Galactic Federation, and he was educated and trained to be a messenger when the time was right. So it was really his earliest recollection was two. So he was a Galactic Federation contactee, and his message is benevolent and all about the fall in consciousness. Like, planet Earth was 5D at one time, and then we had the fall in consciousness to 3D. And now we're going to go back up to 5D, and that's never happened before. Now, a lot of planets have gone up in vibration and frequency in octaves, but they've never done the fall and then gone back up. That's something unique that we're doing, and that's why there's no rule book, or it's kind of as we go, we're learning. And Sheldon was a Galactic Federation contactee and messenger, and his mission started in the late 80s. He was also a scientist, and he created some free energy weapons, not free energy weapons, free energy technologies. Only the cabal stopped him from having that go through. That was in the 70s and early 80s. And so, he has an interesting background. Sheldon also, because they started teaching him when he was so young, they would tell him, go to the library, read everything you can on, let's just say, crystals. And then he would go and read, and then they would say, here's the truth, here's the expanded knowledge. So he didn't have to unlearn, like all of history. They would say, okay, go read the history books. He would, then they would say, here's what really happened. And so they would educate him. So he never had to unlearn the way we are all going, what? None of that is true. Nothing we thought is true. Oh my goodness. So anyway, he was very integral part of starting in the 90s of that movement about let's get reunited with our galactic roots, with our galactic community. And, we're in isolation. Planet Earth and our whole solar system is in isolation. And only the ones that were already here were allowed to stay. And there wasn't going to be any travel to planet Earth while we go through this experience of limited consciousness. So Sheldon was very integral also in educating in around 2000 the spiritual and UFO community about Nasara. So that also put him on the map because he was one of the first to really explain all of that. And now it's all happening, even though it took 23 more years.
Yeah.
But there we have it.
That's awesome. Now, Miles, I would like to bring you in here. And if you would, please share with us your background a little bit and how you became familiar with Sheldon and PAO and that whole mission.
Okay, well, back in the early 90s, I was visiting a friend in LA who's a piano player, and we met at a cultural congress and became instant musical buddies. So I went down there to play music with him, and he was a music teacher, so sometimes I was on my own. So walked into the bedroom one day, and there was this book line on the bed called Bringers of the Dawn by Barbara Marciniak.
Oh, yeah.
And I had never even known there was such a thing as channeling or things to do with galactics or UFOs. My spiritual interest was Sufism or just sort of traditional kinds of alternative forms of spirituality. When I read that book, it kind of did something to me. It kind of opened up a new channel. a new frequency. So, like Colleen, I went to a metaphysical bookstore in Vancouver and was saying, okay, let's go to the channeling section. And there I was, and this book stood out like crazy. It was called You're Becoming a Galactic Human by Sheldon Neidl. Got it, brought it home, read it, and it was almost like an awakening for me. There was something in that book that brought home things that I had always wondered about. My mother, when I was a boy, when I talked to her about various things, the one thing that woke me up as a kid was she said, I think Christ is a spaceman. And that kind of memory brought me to reading You Are Galactica Human from that perspective. And after I finished the book, I'd read it 6 times, I wanted more. And I said, okay, where is this Sheldon Neidl? Can't just read the book and drop that and have that just be all there is. So I went and looked for a website, and there'd been a website that they had put up, but it hadn't been, nothing had happened for a year. It was like dead information. So somehow I was able to get in touch with them, and I said, would you like to have somebody do your website? I'm a graphic designer. So they said, sure. So that was back in '94, and that's how I first got involved with the Planetary Activation Organization. As I became involved more and more, I realized that as Sheldon was doing many webinars after he went to the internet and became more well known that way, I was able to help by organizing the kind of discussions they had, repackaging with graphics some of his information so we communicated more fluidly with people. And then 5 years ago, when Sheldon wasn't able to continue anymore, Colleen and I ran with it, and we started having guests every month. We have monthly webinars on our Planetary Activation Organization. And what we're basically doing is taking what we can do to keep his legacy alive and also bring in other voices so that we can make connections and help people wake up and help the planet become what it's meant to be and not what it isn't. So that's my story.
Well said. Well said. You know, and that's where we're at now, is that you know, everything is coming to a head. You know, as I've heard somebody say, the good are getting gooder and the bad are getting badder. So it's like this, you know, convergence of crazy energy, and everything is being revealed, though. I mean, things that we were becoming aware of in the 90s, you know, is all coming out now. And of course, we see this so-called disclosure of, well, gee, do you think there's aliens? You know, we've never been alone, you know, ever in this world. And to think that, you know, somehow now we're just discovering that. But and I found it absolutely fascinating that now they think, you know what, there's aliens and they're a threat. Well, you know, aliens have been around forever. If they were a threat and if they were going to, you know, just totally wipe us out, they would have done it a long, long time ago. So, I mean, anybody with half a brain could figure that out. But it's also interesting that a lot of the craft that people see all the time, all over the world, you know, flying around, is man-made and reconstructed from, you know, other races and their equipment that has been either shot down or crashed or whatever. So we live in extremely interesting times. And Colleen, what do you think? You know, where do you think we're at in all that? And what's your take on how things are going in that direction as far as awakening?
Well, if I just address, you know, recently they're saying, oh yeah, UFOs. Oh, here. Oh, now Congress is looking at if UFOs and what we should do. Or no, we can't call them UFOs anymore. They're UAPs. You know, they had to give them a new name.
Right.
Unidentified aerial phenomena. And a friend of mine called up, and I was taking a break from listening to all the news, the alternative news. I don't listen to mainstream news except every once in a while because you have to know what they're saying.
Right.
So, you have to tap in every once in a while in order to really navigate all of this. And so somebody called me up and said, "Oh, what do you know about this?" And I said, "Well, I'm really not on the internet the last few days. What happened?" So she told me, and I said, "Well," she goes, "it's disclosure." And I go, "In the end, it's disclosure, but their agenda for bringing it out to you is for the false flag of a UFO invasion." And she goes, "Really?" And I go, "Yeah, but in the end, because that's not going to happen, in the end, it is disclosure." So I welcome it, even though you have to remember what their agenda is. It's not what our agenda is, saying that they're benevolent and loving and here to help us through our ascension process. So,
Oh, no, not at all. And actually, what I think most of us have come to realize is that they've decided in order to have a fake alien invasion, they need to let us know that there's aliens out there. Because if we don't know they're there, they can't be this terrible threat that they're going to try and do with Blue Beam. Miles, what's your take on that?
Well, what amazes me, and I ask myself this often, is I reincarnated in this particular life and I signed up my life contract to witness an evolutionary moment in mankind. And I think, okay, so here I am, part of a planetary activation organization, and I'm trying my best with Colleen to bring information to people. What amazes me is why was this, let's say this was a kind of experiment, a galactic experiment, and I'm a galactic anthropologist observing mankind in this way. Why are we having a certain percentage of people totally asleep, a certain percentage of people dark, a certain percentage of people sitting on the fence waking up, and a certain percentage of people really awake? Why are these different categories of people around? What's the plan? What's going to happen in this evolutionary process that will allow more people to wake up and for us to get to the next level? What's it going to take? And then I think about that word, the sting, where somehow in the background, there's got to be forces working of light that are not going to tell us what they're going to do, because if you tell us your plans, it's like giving away your whole card in a poker game. So I think what keeps me calm is my instincts tell me that something's happening in the background, maybe with the help of the galactics, with certain individuals who are able to work with them. And they've got some kind of plan to help raise the evolution of mankind. And we're going to find this out. How? I'm not sure. Is it going to be abrupt? Is it going to be gradual? That's the big mystery. So that's my kind of take on things.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, sometimes this feels like, somebody's ant farm that we're in, like we're being observed, and it's like, okay, what are these crazy ants up to today? Oh, they're trying to blow up the world. Oh, no, now they're, these people that have harnessed all the power and control are trying to, do away with certain members of the population or something along those lines. It's just gotten, batshit crazy, as they say. And I feel like, there's all levels of understanding. There's all levels of souls who have come into this world to experience. And I think some of us maybe have been around a few times before here, maybe more than a few times, and kind of like, caught on a lot quicker. And sort of volunteered to come in and be part of that vanguard of, seeing what's happening and maybe sharing that information to anyone who wanted to possibly pay any attention to it. So there's all these different levels of consciousness and understanding. And so with that, if you're going to, orchestrate a play and an experience for all the beings in this world, you kind of have to go with those at the who are at the back of the room, who maybe aren't the brightest students in the world, and you kind of have to bring them along by showing them what's going on. That's the way I see it. I think that we're very gradually and gently being shown, and It's sped up, definitely. It's not as gentle as it was before. There's a few jolts in there, that hopefully will enable people to see a little more than they've been able to see. Because for most people, their sense of security, their sense of self is all wrapped up in their programming. So if you start messing with their programming and their sense of security, it's, that cognitive dissonance kicks in, and it's really tough for them to come to grips with a change in their paradigm. So anyway, I think that's kind of where we're at with that situation. Now, what was Sheldon's vision? Did he see any kind of a timeline or anything for this, Colleen, or was that kind of just as some of our galactic friends have said, it's just a sequence of events?
I think it's more of sequence of events. At one time, there's been several timelines that have been put out there. And unfortunately, we haven't energetically matched it to have that happen, but it could have happened. So that's why it's not always incorrect information from all the galactic messengers. It's that they're trying to get us to get there faster. And if we're not there, then it goes on to the next timeline. Or the next, what can we do to wake them up a little bit more? Or what do they need to do? Or we have to let them alone so that they can evolve a little further, because they're not there yet energetically as a collective. So there's our community that, we're just biting at the bit to have more action. And we have to watch what you just said, which is the gentle unfoldment, so that people can understand the truth and how they've been manipulated, and how the cognitive dissonance has taken a hold of them. That's one of the hardest things they say, is to admit that you've done something wrong, or that you've been having a false belief system. And so I pray every day, put out the energy that everybody is
Colleen, you're
taking in.
Breaking up a little bit.
Oh,
you're breaking up a little bit.
Okay.
Your connection, I don't know if maybe you can see your connection or not, but you're breaking up a lot.
Okay, well, Miles, you continue then.
Okay,
All right.
well,
Miles, let me continue. And that's what Colleen's internet connection will improve. And I'm not sure how that's working right now. But Miles, I wanted to ask you, some people have sort of put the idea out there that we're in a prison planet, and that maybe some of the galactics are trying to bust us out, or go along those lines to try and get us out of here. Some people call it a school that we're in. There's all these different ideas on what this realm that we're in is about. So any thoughts on that?
I think if we're in a prison, it's a psychological prison. It's not a physical prison. So it's really a matter of the perception deception. If you want to have a perception that you're in a prison, then you're going to be in a prison. But if you want to have a perception that you're free, then you can be free. So the way I look at it, when I'm walking through, I live in downtown Vancouver, Canada, right in the midst of the city, but we're surrounded by a big park called Stanley Park. We can see the mountains. We're in a peninsula with an ocean. So it's like a city, but it's kind of like a resort. It's not so much like a New York type of city. But even then, I'm walking through, watching people sometimes with their masks on, people who are thumbing with their phones, and I'm thinking, why am I here? This is like a foreign place to me. I get these like inner visceral feelings of, what am I doing here? And then I have to remember, okay, think of yourself as a galactic anthropologist. If you can think like you're a galactic anthropologist and observe people like you were here, if you're a starseed from another place, even if physically we're part of 3D, that helps you get through. It helps you break out of that quote unquote prison, because you don't have to be in the prison. You can actually psychologically be who you are. You can create your own sovereignty. And I guess the hardest part for us, if you're a starseed, you're in the front lines, you're seeing all the things that are going on, is how to be patient. It's really hard to be patient with this. That's the big test for us. And also, I think when we've signed up, we want a payoff. I didn't just come here to live my life without some kind of a payoff. So I like to think of this. You're in an action movie and you're part of the action movie and you're one of the heroes in the action movie. So in all the action movies I've ever watched, there reaches a point 3/4 of the way through where you're in an impossible situation. There's no way out. There's absolutely no way you're going to deal and get out of this one. So you keep thinking, how are they going to end this? Get the hero out of this movie. What are they going to do? And that's the position we're in. I don't think we've got to the point where we found the exact solution to get out of the action movie. That's, I think, where we are in our place.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I kind of see it that way too. And I often ask myself the question, how bad does it have to get before everybody else is going to start seeing what we see,
Yeah.
And apparently we're not quite there yet, unfortunately. And, of course, none of us want it to get that bad, to where it becomes blatantly obvious to literally anybody. So I guess we're just along for the ride. We're participants in the ride because, we obviously realize we didn't come here to just, that's interesting, just be an observer and just kind of hang out and see. No, we came here to live in this realm, to be a participant in this realm, and not just to, just be along for the ride, so to speak. So, Colleen, let's see, is your internet going pretty good right now? Let's check it out.
Hope so.
All right, that sounds way better. I don't know what happened there. Maybe we had just a temporary glitch. But anyway,
never knows.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about some of the things that Sheldon was saying and is saying up until recently about our galactic friends out there. If you could share a little bit more. In other words, how many, are we talking about one group, the Pleiadians, which we're all familiar with, or are we talking about Sirians, Andromedans, just the list goes on and on and on. We're talking about many, many groups. And what about the reptilians, Dracos, Greys, all that kind of stuff?
Well, I'm a Sirian starseed. I think Miles is, and Sheldon was. But his group was the Galactic Federation, which is a conglomerate of over 200,000 star nations just in our Milky Way galaxy. And there's also people from other galaxies now coming to watch us as well. But mostly we just talk about our Milky Way galaxy and the Pleiadians, the Sirians, the Arcturians, the Andromedans. Those are probably the four biggest ones. And then those are the human ones. Well, Arcturians actually aren't human. So they're an equine species. And I have a great relationship with some of them, and they've shown their faces to me. So I do love them, the Arcturians. So Sheldon really talked about all of them and educated everybody on the different ones. He wrote a book, Your Galactic Neighbors, and he outlines 22 different species. I think 11 were human and the rest were non-humans. Because at one time he put out a message from the Galactic Federation, like, okay, the non-humans, but they don't like to be called that, but the other sentient beings, they like to be called. Because when you say non-human, then you're putting humans above, and they didn't like that. So they came in and said, we want to be called other sentient beings. Okay. So, they put it out there like, okay, everybody start meditating on some of the other beings and see if they come to you and become comfortable with them. Well, it failed miserably. Nobody wanted to do it. They only wanted the human ones. So then they said, okay, when first contact happens, it'll only be humans at first, and then we'll introduce the other sentient beings as we go along. So that was one of the things. And it's all benevolent. And really, even Dr. Stephen Greer agrees with what Sheldon said, or he agrees with Dr. Greer, that the only real threat of aliens right now are on our planet. You know, the reptilians that have been in the underground bases, they're coming to the surface sometimes, or they don't actually come to the surface so much, they just play with the surface people. But the rest of the galaxy they've all joined the Galactic Federation of Light. They've all joined, if not a member of the Galactic Federation, an ally of. So we really don't have that threat out there the way it's being portrayed. And not too many messengers say that, but Sheldon's always said that, and Dr. Greer agrees, and a few others agree, but those two are the ones I'm going to say right now, because most people know Dr. Greer, even if they don't.
Yeah, he's been on this show before as well.
Yeah, so Sheldon has been gone for 5 years. That's a long time in internet land. So a lot of people do not know him, but he was integral in bringing some of this information forward.
Okay, Miles, I wanted to ask you about, some people talk about, well, there's a couple things I wanted to ask you about, that there are sort of placeholder beings in this world, whether they're actually human or not human or soulless or clones. And then there's the idea of hybrid beings. And some people have said that they feel like these hybrid reptilian human beings are some of the ones who are running this nasty show that we see going on. So what do you think about all that?
Well, the person who seems to have a pretty good take on that is David Icke. Many of you may know about him, and he's been vilified for talking about these things quite often. But most of the information I've encountered is basically things he said, because I have no personal experience with that. Is it possible? Probably. He talks about the reptilian brain and that they feed on energy of fear. And so if you think about the information that's going on right now, it's all fear-based. And so basically we're always under the umbrella of information that's trying to create a fear among us to such an extent that all of life becomes an emergency, becomes a threat, and then it develops this need to be rescued. So if you feel a need to be rescued, then you stop doing things. You just sit around and wait, and you go on with your life and you do nothing. So I think that's part of the plan, that we're infiltrated with that kind of way of energy that kind of deletes our motivations. And I think that's what we have to fight against. And maybe part of it is more than just the physical thought of something reptilian, or that maybe it's more just a frequency that is counterbalanced to positive results or positive doing, that it's a way of trying to keep people from doing things because we bask in fear rather than in positive thinking. So it can be also a concept, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And the idea of the ones who control this world keeping us in a state of fear as much as possible is exactly how they're able to accomplish their control system. It's fear and division, constantly pitting one group against another, whether it's political or whether it's gender now somehow, or just there's a myriad of different things that they try and pit us against each other. And as long as we're doing that, and as long as we're participating in that stupid fear game that they're throwing out there, we're not going to be able to come together. And we know that we must come together because all of us here have a commonality. We want to live in peace. We want peace and prosperity, love, cooperation and understanding for everybody. Everybody wants that really at their core. There are differences of opinion on how that can be accomplished, but we have to come together in commonality in order to overcome the darkness which has descended upon this world and has been here for a long, long time. But now, they're really showing themselves to the max. There's no hiding stuff. We used to see it in the shadows, 20, 30 years ago, but now they're just right in your face saying, this is what we're going to do to you. next to control you and all that kind of stuff. So, Colleen, talk about your website and what you guys are doing on there. And, I know a lot of people will probably be interested in checking that out.
Our website is PAOWEB.com. That's PAO, Planetary Activation Organization, web, WEB.com. And there's a whole lot of things. Everything Sheldon did is on there. So there's a lot of videos that tell a little bit about what each video that he did was about. And then he did 91 webinars. And then Miles and I are doing our 65th webinar this month. And we're going to be interviewing Ted Marr. And that'll be on the 27th of August. And so we hope that you all can come. You can go on our website and find out what that'll be all about and how to register for that. And so once a month we do that. And then I put out a newsletter 5 to 6 days a week where I highlight either writings from me or Miles or other people. I highlight other people to introduce it to the community. And so Miles, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. We're also going to have another webinar on the 14th with
15th.
Or the 15th of August with Deborah Giussi. I have a hard time pronouncing her name. And it's all about her book, Ascension Tips. And we're going to be able to have her tell us all about what her viewpoints are about Ascension. And Colleen, when she does her newsletters, which you can get, they're free. Also, we outline in the newsletters and on our website the details of what our webinar guests are going to talk about. And what we try to do is tune in to the moment. What do people need to hear now? What's really important for this moment in time to help encourage more awakening or more hope? And those are the type of guests we get, and those are the type of questions we ask our guests. So if you're interested in Sheldon, we have an archive on the website which has every one of his webinars. And some of them are absolutely amazing. And in our introductory area of our website, there's a place called You Are Becoming a Galactic Human. And there are some webinars there where he introduces the galactics. And for those of you who are new to Galactic Land, you'll be able to get a kind of galactic, it's called Galactic 101, Galactic Activation 101, and You Are Becoming a Galactic Human. So you'll be able to find all kinds of things that will suddenly open up your eyes, and you're going to probably spend a lot of time in a new world of information.
Wow, sounds great. So I want to thank you guys for sharing with us today, and I want to also thank you for what you're doing in the world. And we're all focused on trying to, uplift humanity to the greatest extent possible. Not that we have all the answers by any means, but our intent is to share information with people and promote the positive ideas that Sheldon started out with and that we're carrying on with, and many of us in the world now. And that's probably one of the great things about the internet is that we're not limited to mainstream news to get information. And the fact that all of our channels are growing, and there's many, many channels out there telling the truth to the people, are growing exponentially. This is a very good thing, and we're sharing out there as much as we can with people. And so I know a lot of people out there will resonate with what you're saying, and hopefully they'll check out your website and what you guys are up to. So anyway, I want to thank you so much for being here. And I will just say in ending, like I always do, we'll see all of you inside the Matrix.